The town of Bridgend in the old county of Glamorgan is named after the medieval bridge which was built across the River Ogmore near to a ford, or shallow river crossing, that lay between the villages of Nolton and Newcastle. Most signs of early habitation have long since vanished, but the river itself is a timeless reminder of the past, flowing down from the Ogmore Valley, where one of its tributaries is no more than a narrow stream, gradually broadening as it passes along the bottom of the valley into a fast-flowing river, until eventually it reaches the estuary at Ogmore by Sea, where it runs out into the eastern end of a bay on the Bristol Channel. Here, amidst the vast sand dunes of Merthyr Mawr, some of the oldest settlements existed, with further evidence of early habitation at Dunraven, a short distance along the coast, where Iron Age forts were constructed. Today, these ancient earthworks appear as ridges in the slope of a hill, which now ends abruptly at the cliff. Although the Romans lived in this region during their occupation of Britain, there are few signs that they were ever here, but there is still the path of a Roman road which travelled from the Golden Mile in the east towards Stormy Down in the west, establishing a route which would serve later invaders, the Normans. Not far from the mouth of the river is the first clear sign of Bridgend's origin. For when the Normans conquered England and swept westward into Wales, they built castles to secure their foothold in the land. And Ogmore Castle is one of the earliest examples of a stone-built fortress, guarding the lower reaches of the Ogmore and Ewenny rivers. The stepping stones make for a picturesque crossing between one bank of the Ewenny and the other. But it was in this area that the Norman incursion paused, while the lords consolidated their position by building strongholds at Coity and Newcastle. Unlike Ogmore Castle, Coity Castle is situated on higher ground, some distance from a river. It was occupied for a longer period than most other castles in Glamorgan, and some of its architectural details date from the Tudor period. Even though many of its walls remain, much of its stonework has disappeared over the years. Owen Glyndwr, the self-proclaimed Prince of Wales, inflicted great damage upon Norman strongholds in this area, but Coity stood firm, so it has to be assumed that the walls were dismantled in more peaceful times to provide building material for Coity's growing number of inhabitants. Newcastle stands at the top of the rock which rises steeply on the west bank of the River Ogmore. Little now remains of the stonework, although there is sufficient evidence, in the shape of this fine Norman arch set in the south-facing wall, to date the castle to the second half of the 12th century. The castle walls, now in a state of ruin, would have commanded an excellent view over the lower ground, and indeed Newcastle is built on the site of a previous fortified structure, probably a simple earthwork, typical of the defences built by the Welsh during the period before the Norman conquest. The fortresses of Ogmore, Coity and Newcastle were strengthened by the rather elaborate fortification of Ewenny Priory around the year 1200. The priory is older than the surrounding defensive walls, and its very early style suggests that it dates from the early 1100s. It was founded by William de Laundre, the first Norman Lord of Ogmore. The church is cruciform in plan, with a massive central tower rising high above the surrounding land, from which radiated the nave, the presbytery, and 2 transepts, although the north transept became a ruin and was demolished. The nave is now the parish church of St. Michael, and within its interior there is a fine arcade of 4 bays separating the north aisle from the main part of the church. Altogether, this is one of the most magnificent examples of Norman ecclesiastical architecture to be found anywhere in the country. Apart from its stem, the font is probably original. The reredos behind the altar is a wall standing 8.5 feet high, its 2 doors leading through to the choir situated beneath the tower, the glass-panelled structure separating the nave from the monastic part of the church. Beyond this 14th century wooden screen is the presbytery, and the south transept remains in almost entirely its original condition. Voices from the past receded into these impenetrable walls long ago, leaving stone memorials to preserve the effigies of the people who once ruled this part of Wales. Their Norman French inscriptions written in Lombardy lettering. Here lie the people who established the beginning of Bridgend.